Hi, Mark here from the Tangent-Bound Podcast Network and host of the flagship show, the Tangent-Bound Podcast. Did you know that we over at Tangent-Bound are always looking for amazing podcasts to promote? And did you also know that we are also proud nerds and geeks of everything from movies, music, gaming, TV shows, and comic books to wrestling, MMA, soccer, and football? Whatever you can nerd or geek out about, we've got it. And if you're interested, we can help you find it. And if you're a show looking for a place to call home, we've got you covered. Side effects may include upset stomach, dizziness, tumors, shakes, and in some rare cases, death from excessive laughter. Though to be fair, it's only sometimes. Other side effects may include diarrhea, gallstones, heart palpitations, and strong desire for cookies on the dark side. Talk to your doctor and visit TangentBoundNetwork.com and see if Tangent-Bound Network is right for you.
Sucks to the last drop. Are you gonna blow your head off? Take good aim and don't forget to duck. A life sucks every Monday and all the way to Sunday, but I wouldn't have it any other way. I don't care how you're doing, what's up or how's it hanging. I'd like to buy this world one last drink. Life sucks all of the time. Stick it up your sunshine, and then you'll see the clouds every day. And then you'll see the clouds every day. And then you'll see the clouds every day.
Here we go.
Welcome to the Crazy Life, everyone. My name's Jen, and I am your hostess for the evening. Welcome to any new listeners, and welcome back to all of our regular listeners. And with me, as always, is Hanno and Brian. Hey, guys.
Hello.
Hi.
So, how have we been? We've just kind of caught up a little bit off the air, folks, and Hanno's going to be leading us with good news.
Yeah.
I feel like I really wish I had sound drops because I'd play the thing from Futurama, Professor Farnsworth, the good news, everyone.
Good news,
Yeah.
everyone.
Except that usually means
He's
bad
got
news.
delicious cherries.
Yeah.
That's going to be our good news.
Bitchin' cherries, dude.
Awesome.
I got these great cherries about 2 weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of cherries. And, I mean, they were so good, and they were organic, and I'm just like, wow, this is better than, munching on really sugary desserts, and Sharon and I were loving them, and I go back to the grocery store, and I see them, and this time I actually look at the price at $9 a pound, and I'm like, nope.
Wow.
Wow.
They were good, but they weren't that good.
Yeah.
And, what is this bag of cherries? It's at least, it might be 2 pounds, I don't know what it is. Anyhow, they just had regular cherries for $4.99 a pound, and they're just fine.
Yeah.
This week, that is. So I'm very happy with my cherry purchase.
It's so crazy because cherries are usually cheaper than that here because, Michigan cherries and all, but, man.
I was just thinking that too. I'm like, wow, that's our high prices.
Well, I learned
in different areas.
No, I learned, definitely. I learned when Henno came to town and we went, well, two things. One, when we went to Chicago and the prices there, I was like, geez, some of this stuff's expensive. And Henno's like, this is pretty much what I'm used to. And then when he came here, we went and got breakfast and he's like, that's it?
Yeah.
Like price-wise.
It was $20 with the tip for breakfast for 2 people.
Yeah.
I'm like, you're gonna be kidding me.
Yeah. And it wasn't like we got toast and coffee or something. I mean, we both ate real well.
It was full on breakfast. Yeah. I was like, oh yeah, different worlds. Well, and it's funny you say that because I was in the grocery store last night and I'm shopping. I'm buying what I'm not shopping. I'm buying what I need. And I'm buying what I want. And I'm like, okay, I know about how much this is going to cost, and I just had that thought again for a second of like, I don't question food prices just because I don't want to sit there. I did the whole nitpick and track everything as I go through the store, and I'm like, it's not worth it. And I'm typically I'm picking something of lesser quality.
Mm-hmm. That's true. You usually do.
I just assume budget for good quality food. I would just rather do that, and I know it's going to cost more. And, but I also don't need to be stupid. There are things. You go into the produce section, and whatever's out of season is $9 a pound.
Right?
Yeah.
Or whatever it is. But.
You're totally right, though. Yeah. Or buying pre-cut melons or stuff like that.
Yeah. Just spending dumb money, but it was funny this week. On the podcast, this last week on the podcast, you heard me be all excited about motivated and getting stuff done, and I'm here to report this week that came to a screeching halt. And I've been laughing about it.
Ebbs and flows.
Yeah, it did, and it was. I have no problem with it. It was, there was some late nights. And, and early mornings, and just the energy wasn't there, and I just, Monday, there's no way I'm making it to the gym. Tuesday, and then it was like, I got to work on Monday, started listening to my podcast. I'm like, man, everyone's talking about Spider-Man. I can't even listen to these podcasts until I see the movie. So I'm like, well, all right, I'll go tonight. And of course I go see the 9:20 showing. So, by the time I get home and go to bed, it's after midnight again, Get up, get to work, and I'm like, I'm not going to the gym. But today, I brought the clothing, and it was a pretty hot day today. I mean, it's not nearly as hot as it was last week, but I'm on a roof, and the afternoon hit, and I'm like, ooh. I mean, I was hot, and I'm like, I need to get off the roof, drink some water, get in some shade for a little bit, and just kind of take a break, and I did, and within a half an hour, I actually felt better. I was like, oh, cool. You know?
Heat exhaustion is no joke, anyone listening. I've been through it a couple of times. It's no joke.
Yeah, and that's always, and I literally did it as my safety meeting last Thursday. I was like, last week was about, what do you do to avoid it? What do you look out for? How do you prevent it? And that was one of the things where I'm just like, okay, I know I'm getting hot. It's worth it for me to, do something else for half an hour. And it was great. And I got done and I'm like, oh, cool. All right. I'm going to go to the gym. Great. So, I felt good about it because there's a little bit of me that I was like, ooh, is this going to be a week off?
Yeah.
But you know what? Once again, the show keeps me accountable. I mean, it does. Yeah. Coming in here every week and checking in with you guys. Mm-hmm. It's so good for me. It's so good to have some place where I go, okay, this is what I shared about last week. This is this week. And something to keep me in mind of like, okay, can I, it's not so much that I have to do something. It's more like, can I do it? Mm-hmm. Like that, they'll think, can you do this? And I was like, yeah, I can do this. All right. And, my GM, as I was, psyching myself up, he's like, how you'll feel when on your way home. And I'm like, you know what? You're right. I'll feel really good.
Yeah.
I'll feel great. And I do. So yeah, it's, I wish I could find some motivation right now to do some music. I mean, I'm like into it, but it's like, I'm sitting down at the desk, which is, Brian, you and I have talked about this so much about even just sitting down sometimes is a huge win.
Yeah.
It's cause somebody, you're just sitting on the couch and you're just looking over there and you're like, at least I sat down and I picked up an instrument and I played a little bit and nothing came of it, but it's like, all right, no big deal. At least I sat down and I'm in that I share about this all the time. I'm in that phase where I'm waiting for it to come again. Mm-hmm. But I haven't walked, I'm not walking, I haven't walked away. I know it's going to be there.
Right. Yeah. Well, sometimes you have to do that with creativity. Sometimes you just got to give it space. You really do. Yeah.
Yeah. And don't get I'm not discouraged by it. Mm-hmm. I'm accepting where it's at and that, we have ebbs and flows and, like you said, this is a non-flowing week.
Right.
The tide has gone out a wee bit.
Yeah.
But that's cool that you can have that perspective, you can understand that it's temporary. This is not a permanent position, that it's not going to never come back or anything like that. That this is a temporary moment that you're in.
Right.
And that this too will pass.
Yeah.
So it's really good that you do.
It's been great to have that too, and to share that here, because like I even, I don't know, whenever it was in last fall, there's been several times where I've been like, okay, I know I'm in a funk right now, but I know it's not forever.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
I know it's not forever. It's just for now. And I'll keep doing the work, I guess. And part of the work for me, and I'm realizing more and more how important this is being accountable.
Yeah.
Being accountable to people in my life helps keep me focused, because it takes me away from living in my head and isolating and all of those things.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, not to mention, it's like, when I was in school, I had no trouble producing art because, well, I got something due Friday, I got something due next Monday, I got something, you know what I mean? So there's that, like you said, being held accountable. It's deadlines are held me accountable. And then I got out of school and I was, when I first got out, I was like, I'm not, I noticed that like during summer breaks and stuff, after a couple weeks, I'm like, I need to sit down and do something here, or this is going to turn into like not doing any work for a while, because there's nothing holding me accountable. I didn't have to turn anything in. So I was like, I'll take time off and whatever. And, I'll go do this instead. So, you're right, that holding you accountable, even if it's that aspect, or like with you doing this, if nothing else, you can kind of, we've talked about how sometimes you've asked me how I can measure depression, or I can measure this or that from like day to day, week to week, whatever. Being held accountable does the same thing. Like you can look at last week and go, wow, I talked about how I did this, 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 and this. Yep. Why am I dropping off this week? What is the catalyst for that change,
Yeah.
So that is what makes, for me, therapists important.
Yes.
Having any sort of a group that you get together with, and this is one of my groups.
Yeah.
They truly are tools that you can put to use in your life on any way, shape, or form. Mm-hmm. Whether it's your physical health, your mental health, your hobbies, your work life, your personal, any aspect of your life, you can use these tools. And I think that is, for me, it is the number one thing I'm grateful for recovery is it, and this happens to a lot of people in recovery. It's like, well, if I could lick addiction, what else can I, nail?
Sure.
Using these tools. If it worked here, what else can it work on?
Well, again, it's you then can have a success that you can visualize when you're doing other things. So like you said, you continue doing the work, you see that success. Next time you can go, wow, this is really hard. And you go, you know what? I beat this, which is really, really hard. This pales, and it's like, so, I got this.
Yep. And it also helps with not beating yourself up too, because it's good to have one success kind of under your belt to say, and especially a recovery from something that was really, kind of life or death, is the truth of it. If you have something that's kind of life or death, to say that, well, I got past that, then you're less likely to beat yourself up on something minor, because you're like, okay, well, all right, I didn't quite get this one, but hey, I still have this. And I can get back to that thing whenever I want. And that's how I am with the whole sugar thing. It's like, okay, I managed to put something out of my life that was destroying my life. If I slip a little bit on eating junk food this week, I'm not going to beat myself up too bad about it.
Yeah.
Right.
So, yeah, that makes sense.
Well, and I think it's also, I love doing the show, because I'll be honest, up until like not even 10 minutes before the show, I was sitting there going, I just don't want to do this, because I had just had an argument with a friend, and it was really tearing at me, and I just felt awful. And I'm like, I don't want to go and be on display, and and then it dawned on me, like, this is the time to do this.
Yeah.
This is the moment to do this, is to get together in a non-judgmental situation. It's like, I know you guys will, I can talk to you guys and talk to the audience and know that this is my therapy of choice.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I get a chance to let things out and talk about things in a non-judgmental situation.
Yeah. Well, it's like, I was telling my therapist on the last visit I had, I was like, you know, what's really awful is I was like, that day, I was like, I got up and I was like, my brain was going, you know, don't go to therapy today. You don't feel like going, coming up with excuses for, you know, calling off and all this. Mm-hmm. And I was like, you know, the sad part is I almost listened. And it's like, that should have been the big red flag that it's like, you need to go to therapy, you know?
Yeah.
And yet I was almost like, meh, you know? That's how, that's how easy that stuff is to buy into sometimes, you know?
And I already feel better. I mean, it's just, we're just now, we're just starting, and already I feel better.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I talked with you guys a little bit off air, and just talking with you on air, I feel more secure. I feel more in control. And that's huge. That's huge for me to kind of be able to gain that control in a very high emotional state, to be able to kind of bring it all together, even if I'm not being as articulate as I'd like right now. It's just, it's a really great feeling.
Yeah. To me, it's like you have a solution.
Yeah.
It's just so, and like you're talking about, Brian, it's funny. It's like when we need that solution the most is typically when we're most likely to blow it off.
Yep.
Oh, that's right. I laugh. I go, yeah, I'm sick. You know, I'm like, I'm seriously still not well. If that's it, I mean, it's true. It's absolutely true. It's like it's the natural state. It's weird to think that my natural state is to self-sabotage, you know, and especially when I know I have solutions that I can tap into. What's my go-to? Who needs it? You know,
right?
What? You know? Why should I be helping myself here?
Yeah, I mean, that's right. Seriously. And, but like this, one of the things I've been looking forward to this week is, all right, I was like, all right, tonight, tomorrow night, I have my men's group. I'm going to, no matter what. Looking forward to that. Just checking in with everybody. You know, I'm looking forward to the rest of my week.
Mm-hmm.
If that's my attitude for this week, then I'm feeling pretty darn good.
There you go.
I'm looking forward to my week.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
And I've had a really nice week up to now. You know, today's been a rough day, but I turned 39 yesterday for everybody.
Yay!
Yes.
Also,
birthday to you.
Also, our friend and listener of the show, Clint, turned I don't know what, 70 or something yesterday.
Something like that.
Yeah, so
70.
Right.
Happy birthday, Clint. I didn't get a chance to wish you a happy birthday on Facebook, but happy birthday. And any listeners out there that are celebrating their birthdays, 7-Eleven, whoop, whoop.
Yep.
Awesome birthday. And, so it was a little weird for me because I started getting a little, my uncle is actually in the hospital right now, battling, some illnesses, and we went and saw him on Sunday with my dad, and it kind of brought things kind of a smack in the face, you know, that he's only in his early 70s, and that's less than half of where I'm at. So you know, my brain was doing some math for me, and I'm like, okay, brain, let's not go down that road. But, yeah, it was, you know, usually they don't start going down that road until next year when you start turning 40 and stuff, but
even then, don't borrow from the future, you know?
Exactly, exactly. And even when you turn 40 or 50 or 60 or whatever milestone that kind of gets you thinking, you can't borrow from the future. You know, it is what it's going to be.
Yep.
You know, no one has come to me and said, all right, you only get, 36 more years or 22 more years. So who am I to say that I only get so much time?
Yeah.
I have no idea.
It's true.
But what it did do is it made me really think about everything that I do and the meaningfulness of it. You know, and really start to identify, what is this doing to enhance my life? What am I doing to enhance my life? And if I'm doing things that are not enhancing my life, I need to figure out ways of culling the herd, shall we say, you know? Let's get rid of some of the activities or some of the things that I do that aren't value added. You know, let's get rid of that stuff. It's not important. And not to say that everything has to be incredibly important, because I'm not giving up my trunk TV. I'm not giving up my bachelorette, my, you know, my gypsy weddings. So I'm not giving up all my fun stuff either, but at least I want to really kind of a commitment to myself to really start taking a look at things and saying, okay, really, is this value to me? Or am I just spinning my wheels and doing this because it's what I should do or have to do? Do I really have to do it? If it's not value added, maybe I don't.
Yeah. To me, it's like, it's having that wherewithal to make choices.
Yeah.
And to honor those choices in your life. You know, I use, you know, me and some of my friends, we talk about this idea of value, and I get that, and I also don't like it, because it's somehow I'm weighing things and I'm saying something's more, you know, and I don't like that, but I like the idea of like, no, I'm just a little more active in my choices and my decision making on a daily basis.
That's a good way of putting it. And that's one of my favorite words, is choice. Yep. I love that word. That was actually part of my vows when I got married to my husband. Is one of the last vows I made to him is, I choose you to be my partner for life. That's
awesome.
Because he knows how important that word for me is. And I want to make sure that was in there. So it's not, it was an active decision. This isn't just me happening along these pathways or whatever. Right. This is an active decision that I was making. So, it's, you know, and you're right, it is. It's making those active decisions with what you're doing and what I want to do. So, but yeah, it's been an interesting week. I'm on a new schedule. I have to be up at 3 a.m, so, which makes life easier, or harder, depending upon what I want to do during the day. Easier because I get off at 1 p.m, which is nice. Harder because I have to be in bed by like 7. So, when most people are getting off work, having dinner and stuff, I'm like, I'm going to bed. Yeah. So,
which really wasn't that far off of where you were before.
Let's be honest. You're right.
Like I used to say, when the streetlights came on, Jen was ready to go to bed.
I have always been a good sleeper, and I love my sleep. Yep. It's just now when I go to bed at 8 o'clock, I'm only getting 7 hours of sleep, not
true,
not the 10 or 11 that I was used to. But yeah, those days are over with 10 or 11 hours of sleep.
Right, yeah, because you can't go to bed at 4 p.m, so yeah.
I could, but probably not going to happen.
Right.
Even I kind of draw the line somewhere. It's like 6:30, I'm getting tired, I'm going, really?
Hey, Jen, you want to go get lunch? I got to get to bed. Like, exactly. What do you work, I mean, I guess it's no different than somebody who works, any overnight shift or whatever, it's a lot of times they do have to go to bed super early because,
Exactly. So it's adjusting to that and stuff. So it's been one of those crazy weeks. It's been ups and downs and little twists and turns and stuff. But all in all, I'm in a better place than I was when we started the show, which is always the best thing I can say about the show.
Yay.
I agree. Yeah. I agree. That's usually how I feel too. By the time we're done, no matter how I felt when we started. And honestly, same with when I do Salty Language. It's that way too. Because even if I walk into it in a funk, by the end of it, Tony's usually got me to where I've laughed enough that, I don't feel as bad.
Get those endorphins going.
Yep. Yeah. So it's funny, nothing's really happened in my week until today. Like, it's been pretty boring because, you know, we've had a lot of humidity lately, so I've really not wanted to go anywhere. My anxiety's been through the roof lately. You know, and last night, about 4 a.m, I was in bed and my head just started killing me. And, I mean, normally it hurts for me to have my eyes open when I get bad headaches. It hurt even to have them closed, you know, and they were so sensitive, that area was so sensitive, I couldn't put a cold compress on it, which is what I normally do.
Wow.
And I'm sitting there going, you know, I don't want to be like a hypochondriac or anything, but it's like, part of me is like, should I go to the hospital? Because this was way worse than the normal headaches I have. And, you know, it's like, it was a little scary how much it hurt. My vision was affected, you know, but migraines can do that, you know, and, I could not get rid of that headache. I took some Excedrin that I had here, and, you know, I kept putting cold compresses on there even though the area was sensitive. And this morning, you know, it's like, I had therapy today scheduled at 1:30, and I got, you know, at like 12:45, I'm like, I can't go, because I just cannot leave this dark room I'm in. And, so I called and actually canceled my therapy today. And, you know, I don't like to do that, but, you know, cause it's gonna be 3 weeks or so from now until I go again, you know. But there's no way I was going to be able to sit. I mean, I guess, you know, maybe I could have asked her to turn the lights out, but that seems a little weird, you know. Like,
Going wearing sunglasses.
Yeah.
Do the lights.
Yeah, it's like
too bright.
You know what, though? It wouldn't shock me if other people have done that, because migraine sufferers, you know, there's times I have a pair of glasses, Jen knows about it, I don't know if Henno does. I have a pair that are like slightly tinted, like darker, for when I have migraines, so I can still work on my computer or whatever. And it's like, I've worn those out to like therapy before. So, you know, but anyway, yeah, I just couldn't do it today. And it wasn't a depression thing. It was just the headache was so terrible, you know, which sucks, but you know, what are you going to do? You know, again, self-preservation, you know, I had to take care of myself, and unfortunately I had to choose today between therapy or taking care of the migraine, basically. You know, it was a, you know, Sophie's choice kind of situation. There was no, you know,
right. The physical or the mental take care.
Right, exactly. And it's, you know, so anyway, you know, I got back into bed for a while, and, my mom comes in my room and she's like, I need you to come out to the living room. And I'm like, what? You know, cause I was sleeping, so, you know, I'm just kind of jarred awake, you know, and I'm like, what? And she's like, I need you to come out. I was like, okay, you know, so I get up and I go out there and I see my sister sitting in there, and I'm, you know, kind of like, well, this is, you know, obviously something's going on here. And, you know, I found out that, my nephew, was found this morning. He had overdosed on, they think it was on fentanyl, which is an opioid, that's injectable. And, looked like him and his girlfriend both overdosed on it, you know, and he passed away. And obviously not at all what I was expecting, you know?
Sure.
But I could tell by my mom's urgency that it wasn't like I'm having a problem on the computer, or, you know, something like that.
Yeah.
It was,
right.
You know, it was definitely serious. And, you know, this is the second kid my sister's lost this way in the last, 2.5, 3 years. And, just, you know, he was 27 and the daughter she lost before was 21, you know, and we live in an area where I believe the opioid issue is some of the highest, or if not the highest in, like, I think West Virginia has the highest, but the Ohio area is one of the highest in the country for these kind of problems. And it's, you know, it's so sad, because it doesn't take years of it to kill you. Literally one time can be enough, you know? You know,
it's playing Russian roulette.
Yeah, using too much or whatever. And plus, I don't know, you know, you never know if it was something else was added. You know, you have to wait till the toxicology thing comes back. But it was just, you know, just shocking, because I didn't know he had been doing anything like that. You know, to the best of my knowledge, he had been clean. And then to just find out that, and it was just, you know, like any sudden loss, it's a shock, you know, because, you know, you don't expect someone to tell you that your 27-year-old nephew's dead. You know, that's too young, you know, and it's just, it was weird because today is a really hot day and super humid. And, when it's humid, my anxiety is almost always at a higher level. You know, that's just part of, you know, cause your blood pressure rises, all that stuff. After that, I was in shock from it essentially to where I was just sitting there and I kept just going, wow. And I texted Jen and told her because it was just one of those, like, I needed to just tell somebody else, you know, kind of a thing.
Mm-hmm. Make it a little more real.
Yeah, you know, well, plus, you know, I know you knew him and stuff. It's just,
absolutely. Yeah.
Plus, you know my family and all that. So, but I texted you and I texted Tony and Jeannie and told them, and I was just like, afterwards, I was just looking at my phone and I was just sitting there and I'm like, man, I am seriously, like, I'm in shock because I realized that like half an hour had passed and I hadn't even paid attention to it, you know, stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And, I just, you know, and it sucks because there's just nothing I can do to make it better for my sister, you know, who was heartbroken a couple years ago when one of her kids did this, and just another piece of her just ripped out, you know, and it just, and it sucks because I can't, as a brother, I can't help my sister, you know, like I want to like stop her pain, but there's no way, you know, it's gonna hurt. And you know, it's just really tough to deal with. And I was like, man, you know, I was already feeling anxious. This happened. I've been kind of fighting a spiral in depression lately. It's like, man, just today is like a tornado of ugh, you know, just all of it just kind of clumping together today. And I'm sitting there going, man, I wish I would have went to therapy, you know, because that was before I found any of this out. But at least, you know, part of me is going, you could have dumped the rest of the stuff out a little bit, because now instead of being 3/4 full or half full, now I'm like over full with all of this going on, you know? So, yeah. It's been a day. Yeah. So,
it's such a shame because, like you mentioned, I mean, I knew your nephew, and he's one of those, I'm going to call him a kid because of the age difference, and that's how I knew him. Yeah. I knew him most as a kid, and he just had that personality and that smile that you knew he was a good kid, and he kept making bad choices, but at the heart, he's like, you knew he had a good heart, and he was a good person. He was a good kid.
That's what part of why I think it made it so much more shocking was, I kind of felt like, hey, you know, he's on the right path. He had been making changes in his life that seemed like they were positive, essentially, and then just boom, and it's over, you know, and it's, you know, it's like, as my mom's been talking to me today about how she's feeling and listening to and then my other sister came over, you know, for a little while too, and just listening to everybody talk, and I'm like, you know, what's odd about this, and I know essentially it is, but it isn't the same thing, is people I know who've dealt with someone who committed suicide, this is what it sounds like when they're around. Like, this is what their family sounds like, is they're trying to justify it. Why did they do this? Could we have prevented it? Because, you know, all the questions are almost the same questions, you know? Yeah. And it, you know, I'm sure it wasn't a deliberate, overdose, but like I said, essentially, I mean, it is suicide. You know, you inject it in, you know, or whatever, you know what I'm saying? It's like still,
and maybe unintentional suicide.
Yeah, the circumstances are incredibly similar to where it kind of came out of nowhere, and, you know, it was that sudden death. So, I didn't think about that before. Excuse me, we were going through this. It's just really interesting how, as I've read stuff about people dealing with, you know, so-and-so committing suicide, or people I know who've had people in their life that have, you know, and when I hear this and I'm like, wow, these two things are so close to one another, you know? Yeah. So anyway, So, you know, if anyone's listening and you're one of my, like, Twitter friends or online friends, I can't thank you enough for those who've, you know, reached out to me and stuff and whatever, because for people I've never met, it always amazes me how much people care, Yeah. So, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yep. So, yeah. Anyway, kind of with that, I had sent Jen and Henno a top. Unless, did you have something else, Jen, before I?
Nope.
Okay.
Nope. I was going to kind of go into it myself.
Oh,
so
okay.
Go for it.
I sent them a thing that was something I don't think we've talked a little bit about dealing with loss or whatever, and that's not exactly what I want to focus on, but I thought that given this, I was kind of thinking of how, anytime something happens to one of us, I love the fact that we bring it to this show.
Yeah.
And we go, how can we use this for a topic for the show to not only help ourselves, but maybe help somebody else who's running through something similar, And, with this, it was, I didn't really want to talk about drug use because we don't have a lot of experience in that realm. So, it kind of feels a little weird, but, the grief stage of things, we all do because everyone's dealt with grief. But I wanted to talk about it a little more about how grief and mental illness kind of play, like when you go through grief and you have a mental illness. Because grief a lot of times, puts people into a depression. It can make you feel anxious. It can make you feel all the things of some of the, whatever. But when you actually, when you have depression or anxiety, it can really, you're already starting with a foot backwards, and then it kind of shoves you even harder. Not that I'm comparing person A to person B. We all suffer differently, but, I just thought it'd be a good overall topic, to kind of, I found a couple things kind of talk about how to, this first one here, has, guidelines for when you live with grief and mental illness. And this is basically like, this one has to do more with like loss, essentially, especially more so like a loved one, or whatever. The first one on this is there's no wrong way to grieve the death of a loved one. And that's entirely true. My sister went to work today. She left here and went to work because she was like, otherwise I'm going to sit at home and think about this all night.
Yep.
And, as we, the night my dad died, we went bowling because it was kind of a tribute to my dad because he loved to bowl. And on top of that, I needed to get out of that headspace for a little while too, so.
Well, and I think it's important, and this is a lesson in non-judgment. And it's so easy for all of us to stand in judgment of somebody else because maybe they don't grieve the same way we do. And it's almost human nature. It's the very first thing that pops in our head is like, what are they doing? Are they nuts? And then you have to stop and take a step back and almost hold yourself back from that judgment and say, you know what? Instead of judging them for maybe not acting the way you would, you really have to turn it around and support them and make sure that you're giving them the support that they need, and say, you needed to go bowling. You told me you needed to go bowling. I said, okay, we go bowling.
Well, it's like when my niece overdosed, I talked to my therapist about that afterwards, and I was like, I haven't cried. There's certain ways I don't feel that I look around and I see everybody else having, very emotional reactions, and I'm not. I'm more numb. And I was like, is that okay, essentially, is what I was asking her. Really, I was asking her, is this normal, or is this a detachment situation? Because when you have depression, you tend to detach. And it's easy to feel apathetic to things, to where I'm looking at everyone, I see them crying, I know why they're crying, and I fully understand it, and I'm sad, but I'm not joining them, and she goes, well, the fact that you thought about all of this stuff and you felt sad and whatever, she's like, again, this is my situation, don't, she was like, yes, you behaved in a normal fashion, essentially. She's like, you just didn't feel like crying or didn't have a need for it, at the time. So, I was like, okay, that helps because, that's part of why I go to therapy. Sometimes I need her to separate my depression situation, because sometimes things parallel so much that I think I talked about it last week about how sometimes you need that help to point out if this is depression or if this is, a normal way or an appropriate reaction. That's what I'm looking for, not normal.
Right.
The second one on here is grief with mental illness may take longer to heal, and that's okay. And that's very true. I think that has a lot to do with, like with me, with my dad. I mean, aside from it just being my dad, I think a lot of it took me a long time because of being depressed,
Mm-hmm.
and you're already essentially not taking full care of yourself. You're not at your most logical, you don't, you just don't recover as easily because you just can't. I hate to say that. I hate doing the, why is something this way? It just is. And it's like, but that really is the case.
Yeah.
You just can't,
Yeah. And it kind of goes hand in hand, obviously with the first one is there is no timetable.
Yeah.
Do not put a timetable on yourself and don't compare yourself to others.
Right.
It's not a contest. It's not judgment. It's your body. You need to take care and just stay in touch with what's happening with you.
Yeah.
And work on it. Get a therapist if you need some additional help to work on it. You will get through it. But you can't stand there and go, well, they bounce back right away. Well, it happens differently. I've had quite a few people die in my life, unfortunately, and each one has been different for me.
Yeah. Well,
some I bounce back right away, some I don't.
Well, and not to mention, sometimes people put on a facade,
Yes.
to where they haven't actually bounced back, but they go back through their emotions, but they haven't actually,
processed it.
Finished processing it or whatever, or processed it at all. Sometimes shock can last for a while before you really start to actually feel those feelings and are able to really take inventory of them,
Yeah.
The next one on here is giving yourself permission to grieve will help you through it. And that's another one that I think is good because, a lot of times when somebody dies, the first thing a lot of us do is I have to be strong for this person, or I can't break down. I got to be this. And it's like, no, you, just like any situation, you need to take care of yourself also. No,
Mm-hmm.
And, the longer you bottle that up and bury it or whatever, when it comes back, it's amazing how it doesn't just come back subtly, later. It comes back with a vengeance,
I always hate that a lot of times women will do this and they're like, don't cry. No, I'm not going to cry. I'm not going to cry. I'm not going to cry.
Yeah.
And they try their hardest to hold back the tears. And it's like, you know what? No, cry. It's like, if you got to cry, cry. It's okay.
And on the flip side of that, if you're a guy, it's perfectly fine to cry. It's really good for you to purge those things, And
even if you can't say it, you can always say allergies. At least up north you can, because we have just about every allergy up here possible. So it's, just say you have allergies.
Yeah.
Cry if you need to cry, and if you can't say what it is, it's fine. Make something up. But let your body go through its motions that it needs to go through.
Mm-hmm.
That's the main thing.
Yep. Just be careful to not obsess. That's kind of that line there. Or again, if you have depression, if someone close to you dies, it'd be perfectly reasonable that you just want to lay in bed and be sad for a couple days, but make sure that couple days or day or whatever doesn't become weeks, like that kind of stuff. That's where it's important to make sure you're taking inventory of yourself along the way,
I think a good analogy that I've heard is it's a lot like, it's just like any other wound. When you have a mental wound or an emotional wound, same thing as a physical wound. You gotta let yourself bleed a little bit sometimes. You stop the bleeding. You start letting it heal up. You don't pick the scabs, people. Don't go back and go back and, and you keep worrying it and messing with it. It's like, no.
Mm-hmm.
you have to let it heal in its own time, take care of it, make sure you're, using the right medication, make sure you're using the right bandages, whatever you need to do to make sure you heal it. But do not go back and pick it apart and keep going back and picking it apart and picking it apart and picking it apart.
Yeah.
That's not going to help you, and you'll end up with much worse scars, as we all know.
Yeah.
It's much harder and much worse.
Oh my.
There's something happening in Henno's house.
Yeah.
I have no idea what. Dog must have run by the window.
Gotcha.
Funny. Yeah, that kind of all leads into the fourth one on here, which is taking especially good care of yourself will help you cope during difficult grieving times. And that makes sense. At its base, it's make sure you're still taking your medicines. Make sure that you try to get out of bed. Make sure that you eat.
Yes.
Try to make sure that you're staying clean, taking a shower or whatever. Like, just boil it down to the basics if you have to, especially sometimes for the first few days after, when you're grieving. That's, it takes everything you can do to just do that stuff. And that's
true.
And that's okay, but try. Like I said, just try to do those things. And, if you can't, that's okay too. They're going to be rough days. This article actually points out, because this woman had lost her son, the woman who wrote this, and she said that during her son's birthday month, she makes sure to take special care of herself. And I can understand that, because, around, like I've said before, Father's Day, my dad's birthday, those days are hard for me because, so I could see that, you're kind of trying to counterbalance the downs that you're going to have from those times. So, that's...
Absolutely.
Yeah. And again, make sure you eat, take your medicine, some of that stuff. And if you don't think you can do it, find somebody to help you, to remind you, to come over. Yeah. Hey, have you eaten tonight? Even if it's they come, that kind of thing. 'Cause you don't think about that stuff, sometimes.
And you wanna, if you can't eat, which I know is a very common symptom of grief, is that you physically can't eat. Ensure is amazing.
Yeah.
I'm not a corporate sponsor or anything like that, but I will say Ensure is amazing. Drink your shake. It's crack a can and drink it. It's simple, easy meal replacement. Peanut butter is an amazing food, folks. Spoonful of peanut butter can really, the protein, the sugars, everything it's got going on in it is really beneficial for you. If you need to get something in you quickly and you don't feel like you can eat a meal, drink it. Yeah. Eat the peanut butter, whatever you need to do to get something in your system consistently.
Right. Exactly. And then the last one on here, which is important too, and this, is setting aside time to grieve will help you cope with your loss. And that's really important because it's like I said, I know like Father's Day is a sad day for me because I don't have my dad. I know that's going to be a rough day for me. So basically I go, okay, I know this is going to be a sad day. And whatever I feel that day, I just allow it, but then the day after, I try not to let it carry over, but setting aside that time and just basically giving, again, as I said earlier, giving myself permission to grieve or to just feel that way is so much better than when you don't, like when you try to fight it the whole time, Yeah. It's just easier to just go, you know what, this is going to be a rough day and just let it be a rough day. Yeah. You just do your best. That's just it, And
I talked earlier about judging other people, but don't judge yourself either, folks.
Right.
Don't judge yourself. Don't, if you need to feel a certain way, it's okay. Let yourself feel that way. You don't have to beat yourself up. You don't have to, you didn't fail by not being happy one day because you need to be sad. Yeah. That's not a failure. It's it is what it is.
Right. Again, especially if you have any sort of a mental illness, like depression, especially, or whatever is, you know, a lot of this is if you recognize you're going to have a rough day or rough times, like I said, you just let yourself have that one. You just, the next day, maybe try to find something that will be the opposite, you know, something that you know will kind of pull you into a normal situation, or, you know, go out to lunch with friends, or, you know, have somebody come over, whatever, to kind of make sure that it doesn't become 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, you know, or a spiral, because it's really easy for that to happen. You know, it's something I'm very careful of each year. You know, because it's super easy to just let it spiral. And, you know, so, this other one I have is from, mentalhealthamerica.net. And, the first part of it this is talking about, living with grief, which is, it says in here, you know, there are many ways to cope effectively with your pain. And, you know, I kind of wanted, I'm not going to read everything there's more to it than these two sections I'm going to go over. So, of course, both of these things will be in the show notes. You know, if you need or want to read, both of them. The first one here is seek out caring people, which again, we're always talking about having a support system on the show, you know. Like me today, the first thing I did, you know, I texted Jen, I texted Tony. You know, my sister came over because she was seeking out caring people. Both my sisters did, you know, like that kind of thing. It's like we all knew we could count on each other and did that, you know, and even if you don't know if they'll be caring people or whatever, you know, like I've talked to people on different things today about it, and it's amazing how, again, people I haven't met have been caring. You know, people who don't know me that well have cared, you know. The next one is express your feelings, which is, you know, a great idea. You know, it says tell others how you're feeling. It'll help you work through the grieving process. So true. Getting things out of you, you know, again, as I advocate therapy every week, basically, you know, it's that kind of thing. That's why I go into therapy. I tell her how I feel. We talk about it, whatever. And I almost always come out of there feeling so much better because I've verbalized it. You know, I didn't just hold it in and I'll deal with it, you know?
Yeah.
So, the next one is one we just covered a minute ago, which was take care of your health, you know? Make sure you get enough sleep, eat, you know, all that stuff. See, the one after that is accept that life is for the living. So it takes effort to begin to live again in the present and not dwell on the past. And, you know, that's so true. You know, it is, you know, if you're alive and whatever, it's like, don't just stop everything. You know, continue to live, get back to, again, a lot of people find comfort in getting back to their routine. You know?
And keep in mind, your loved one that you've lost, if they're truly your loved one, which we know that they are, they're not going to want you to live in the past and dwell in sadness. They're going to want you to live a full and rich life. You know, and it's so important to really keep that in mind, that you're not honoring them by continuously feeling grief and letting yourself stay in that grief zone and not processing through it. That's not an honor for them. They do not want that for you. I feel comfortable speaking on behalf of the dead and saying they do not want that for you.
Right.
There has to be something in that for being able to measure when you're basically taking things too far.
Yeah.
You know, it, of course, you know, everyone goes to the trouble sleeping, trouble eating, you know, those are just all normal things. You're so emotionally out of whack, it just affects your entire, you know, existence. And sometimes it's even hard to do routine.
Yeah.
But there's got to be a point where where your grief has become unreasonably crushing, I guess.
Yeah.
Where if where a friend can say to you, whoever it was, they wouldn't want to see you like this, and if you can acknowledge that and hold on to that, but if you can't, like, if you can't even come up with that concept of like, yeah, my loved one wouldn't want me to go on like this, then I think you're at that unreasonable point, almost like you're choosing to be in there.
Yeah, what?
It's time to get that extra help.
What it kind of what it mirrors is basically like, when they talk about whether to see therapy or whatever, like with mental illness kind of a thing, it's like, is it negatively affecting your life? Mm-hmm. If you can't do what you would consider normal in your life, then it's time to reach out for help, because that's not good. At that point, it's detrimental to your life. So it's you need to try to get help, or you need to at least make changes or whatever at that point that you can make. However it is you need to deal with it. Again, not doctors and whatever, so I'm not going to diagnose, but. But that I would guess it's probably a similar measuring stick, that of course feeling sad, like you said, not getting sleep, blah, blah, but if it's been 6 months, a year, and you're still not getting sleep, you can't go to, it's like, okay, your life has been altered, and don't get me wrong, that still can be normal. Like, you still can be grieving, but you may also still need, you still may need help to process things.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
At the very least, like to find out, is this normal? Is this not?
Yep.
At least to be able to go talk to someone on a professional level.
Yeah.
To get some perspective.
Like I said before, I've said before on here, go get the estimate.
Exactly.
Yep.
Yep.
Go with the estimate.
Yeah, that's it. Like you said, and I did it. When I asked my therapist, is this normal? Or is this normal if someone, is it normal, or is it normal if someone who, who's, affected by depression? And it's like, yeah, that's normal. Okay. Good enough.
Good to know.
The next one on here is also a really good one, which is postpone major life changes. There's some that I would say probably would be fine, essentially, but it says the examples it gives are trying to hold off on making major changes, such as moving, remarrying, changing jobs, or having another child. You should give yourself time to adjust to your loss. Which that one I can see. Like I said, I can see where sometimes you wouldn't have a choice there. Like moving, maybe you'd have to move because you can't afford to live a certain way, or there's certain things like that, but I can see that, like my mom, she had a girl before me, and she lost her to, she died from, SIDS, sudden infant death syndrome. And everybody was like, oh, just have another kid, it'll replace, it'll fix the pain, basically. And my mom's like, no, it won't, because I'm still always going to mourn that little girl, and it's true. She had me, and I didn't replace Sandy, I have my own place in her heart, but I didn't replace Sandy. She still mourns that kid, that child, because it was still a significant loss. So, but she didn't run out and immediately, have another kid. I was well after Sandy, and that's the thing is I think a lot of people would think that, you lost one, oh, we'll just have another one. And then, it's kind of like, oh, your puppy died, immediately go buy another one. It's like, you know what, I'm going to take a little time and grieve before I go buy another one,
Mm-hmm.
or I go have another one. So or again, you get out of a relationship, probably not for the best to immediately run into another one, probably take a little inventory and whatever, but whatever. I mean, sometimes circumstances are, different, but it's on paper, it doesn't seem as smart.
Generally not recommended.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Deal with whatever. And then, okay, now I'm ready to move into the next step of things. The next one, be patient. It can take months or even years to absorb a major loss and accept your changed life. It's totally accurate, That's most of the time it doesn't, these kind of things don't heal overnight. But, if they heal quick and you're able to process and move on, like we said earlier, that's fine. If it takes you a couple years, that can be fine too. You just have to be, the longer the time frame is with it, is probably the more you have to kind of make sure that it's, that you're still in an okay place. Cause at some point you kind of could get to a point where it's like, you are not processing this. Like essentially you're still just picking the scab rather than it healing,
Yeah, letting it heal.
Yeah, so that's, and then the last one on this part of it is, as we've said already a few times in here, seek outside help when necessary. If your grief seems like it's too much to bear, seek professional assistance to help work through it. It's a sign of strength, not weakness, to seek help. And by help, it doesn't have to be therapy. It can be a group. It can be going online and talking in a thing. Again, the things to watch out for is to make sure that it isn't basically a group of people just sitting there obsessing on their problems. That's the wrong kind of group to be in. Make sure it's one where you're kind of working through it. You don't want a situation where all everybody does is just sit around and talk about how awful things are. That won't help you heal.
Solutions.
Absolutely.
Solutions.
Yes,
yeah.
solutions.
Yep. Again, don't focus on the past or the future. Focus on now. And
that even goes with like when you're talking to friends. I know every once in a while we need to just get together and download.
Yeah.
But there's a point where conversation has to shift to solutions.
Right. It's like we've already had this conversation 6 times. It's like,
yeah.
Let's, yeah. So true. Excuse me. So true. And it's easy to do. We've all done that,
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You just can't let something go. Yeah. And I believe we talked about that on one of our episodes, didn't we? About letting go.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like, I think yeah, I was gonna say, I think is a overall topic. The next part of this, I thought was really important too, because we've talked about like how you yourself are dealing with this. And this part talks about things that kind of help with others that are grieving, because really it's one of the most uncomfortable situations to be in as a person. Someone has a major loss in their life, and you're just like, because everything you say is pretty much not gonna, it's just not gonna make things better, so many people do, everything happens for a reason, or, well, they're in heaven now, or all these things trying to be comforting, but it ends up just being,
words.
Yeah, just blah, blah, blah to the person listening, especially when they hear it 100 times, it's, at some point it's like, yeah, these words have no value anymore. But the first one is, share the sorrow. Allow them, even encourage them to talk about their feelings of loss and share memories of the deceased. Which, that's a great point. That a lot of people will, a great example is the situation my family is going through right now. A lot of us are mad because of the drug aspect, And it's like, but, let's also mix in, like when my dad died, he died from cancer. So we were mad because cancer robbed him from us, But at the same time, it was like the best thing we could do then to help the process was talk about positive things, good memories of him and all this, because it helps ease the pain, cause you're hurting, but then maybe you'll laugh or you smile or whatever. And those things all help. Plus it helps distract you from the pain a little bit, which will allow you to move on, The next one's one of my favorites. Don't offer false comfort. It doesn't help the grieving person when you say it was for the best or you'll get over it in time. Instead, offer a simple expression of sorrow and take time to listen.
I like that one.
Me too. That's because it's true. Like I said, you hear it 100 times, a lot of times, and people are always coming from a good place with it. You know, so you never want to be a jerk about it, but it's like at the same time, you're just like, yeah, yeah, it was for the best. Like my dad, he had, had lung cancer. He was wasting away. Was it for the best that he died when he did? Probably. But at the same time, it's like, it doesn't make it hurt less, you know?
Yeah.
And again, I know it's just people they really, you're at a loss. But like they said, the best thing you could do is really just, my sister today while she was here, I gave her a hug and I said, I'm so sorry. And if you need me, text me, call me, whatever.
That's such the best thing to do.
Yeah.
It's so,
that's usually my go-to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I know she stays up late a lot of times and I'm up late. So, it's one of those things that I make that very clear to people that I know sometimes stay up later. It's like, look, if you need somebody, I'm always up at those hours, so feel free to hit me up. You won't interrupt my sleep. You won't wake me, and I'll just sit there and listen if that's what they need, So.
Exactly.
Yeah. See, the next one, offer practical help. This one's a great one too. Babysitting, cooking, and running errands are all ways to help someone who's in the midst of grieving. And it can be also like offer to bring people food, offer to come over and make sure that, or even if you don't offer, you just show up and make sure they're taking their medicine and eating dinner and whatever, stuff like that. Sometimes people just shut down so much that they don't, like we've said earlier, they don't think about that stuff. Or they just don't want to be bothered,
Yeah.
That's a great thing that I've seen people do in my community here is when somebody's going through a major change in life, and it can be, a wonderful thing like, oh, we just had twins, or, or a horrible thing where you just lost somebody you love, is seeing people come together and say, hey, can I, we'll make dinner for you this week.
Yeah.
Or we'll bring you something every night this week so you don't have to worry about it. Little things like that. It's just so cool.
People did that for my brother when his wife died just a few months ago, and it made a huge difference for him because, he works a lot of hours and he's got 4 kids, and it's just, he's basically now constantly doing something, so people just showing up with dinner each night made a huge difference for him, And, I'm with you. I think that's a really awesome thing to do for people. Now, a lot of people will bring food when someone dies, but the problem is everybody wants to bring it at like the same time.
Yeah.
And it's like,
scheduling helps.
Yeah. It's like, we're only going to eat a couple times today, but, not that I didn't appreciate it because it was awesome that we didn't have to cook after my dad died. We just came home and could eat,
Yeah.
Or heat it up and eat it. It wasn't, we didn't have to worry about that. And we weren't, grabbing fast food every night. So it allowed us to continue to eat, to take care of ourselves by providing better nourishment too. Excuse me. The next one is be patient. Remember that it can take a long time to recover from a major loss. Make yourself available to talk. And again, that's true. Everybody's around for that first week. Usually once the funerals and stuff are over, people disappear. And it's not on purpose. It's not that they're trying to be mean. It's just
the timing.
Everybody goes back to their life, and you're sitting there going, wow, okay, this is when I need people, Now, on the flip side of that, you also, if you need people, like if you're feeling lonely, you don't want to be alone, make sure you reach out also. Because, there's nothing wrong with that either. Calling a friend saying, hey, are you busy tonight? I could, do you want to go get dinner or just hang out or something? Because, sometimes people think you're okay, and you gotta let them know that you're not. So,
right.
Yeah. And, the last one, which is weird because I think we've done this, which is don't hesitate to recommend professional help when you feel someone is experiencing too much pain to cope alone.
We may have mentioned it once or twice before.
A little bit, yeah.
A little bit.
Yeah. But that's the truth. Is like that kind of thing. Or again, going back up to the be practical one, offer to take them if they need you to. Like if they, for a therapy or a group thing, or even offer to go with them, for, some, cause I don't, cause most group things, some of them have kind of an open thing. Some of them I know are a little more, private, but whatever, but even if you just sit in a waiting room or something, it just shows somebody that you're there for them. So, yeah.
And find the right fit. You don't want to be over pushy or overbearing, but on the flip side, you want to be available. So kind of read what the person is telling you. Listen to what they want and what they need, and also kind of read the body language and kind of judge the situation.
Yeah. Well, and again, like I said, if nothing else, if you don't know what to do in a situation, you can't go wrong by trying to make sure people do the basics. Like I said, make sure if you have a friend, just come over if you have to make sure, if nothing else, answering the door will get them out of bed maybe, or whatever, or like I said, show up and bring them dinner, or, make sure they're taking their medicines or whatever, those kind of things. Just help them, at least do the self-preservation stuff,
Right.
Because you're no good to anybody if you don't take care of yourself. And sometimes you get into a situation where you need a little kick in the pants,
Exactly.
And, so there's nothing wrong with that. Again, like Jen said, as long as you're not, being judgmental or pushy about it, but just be, just, hey, I just need to make sure that, and I've done that. Me and Jen have both done that. Like when we've been at funerals, we'll go up to the people who, the spouse of the person, like my dad died. We kept going to my mom. Do you need anything? Have you eaten? Have you taken your medicine? We did it for, across those days, because especially when you're at like the showing for, the funeral home, it's super easy to just not pay attention to what time it is, to, all this kind of stuff. Or, when my sister-in-law passed away, we asked my grandma, do you need anything? Have you eaten? Those kind of things. Because my grandma, I love her, but my grandma's the type that she wants to stay in the main floor because she wants to greet and be there for everybody. And it's like, listen, you got to go take care of yourself too, because, by eating, you give yourself the energy to stay out on the floor.
Right.
So.
And that's when you can help everybody.
Right. So that's that's all of these things here. So.
Oh, that was a great list.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a
Both
good list.
of them.
Right.
Yeah.
And, again, we've talked about this kind of stuff, and I really like the fact that last week we did kind of a fun, irreverent kind of, about the learning from dogs and stuff, because it makes, I don't like when we end up doing like really heavy topic after heavy topic, I kind of like to break it up a little bit.
Sure.
So, I'm glad we ended up doing that and not the other topic we were talking about last week.
Yeah, exactly.
Which actually ties into this. We were going to talk about, mortality a little bit. So it's, but
worked out better.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Unfortunately, this had to be a little bit too spot on for you, but, I still think it was a good episode.
You know what though? It's like you said before, it's like, I see this show, like Heno said and stuff too, I see this show as a form of therapy. Yeah. I get that catharsis from, getting stuff out of me a lot of times on here. And I've been very honest on this show about, where I'm at most of the time. And, today, it just felt right. It was like, you know what? This is extremely relevant in my life right now. So,
yeah,
why not talk about it?
Yep.
I think those kind of shows a lot of times have made for some of our better topics,
I agree.
When we're just like, hey, this happened to me today, and we're like, let's run with it,
Right. Well, are we good, guys?
Yeah, I think so.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, awesome. Well, folks, if you would like to continue the conversation with us, we'd love to hear from you. And if you would like to be on the show, please reach out to us, because we would love to, maybe have you on. If you have a question for us, we can talk it over. So give us a shout out. Let us know what's going on. You can reach me on Twitter at Jen's Crazy Life. You can also reach us at the Crazy Life Podcast at Outlook.com for emails, or through our webpage at thecrazylifepodcast.weebly.com. You, Henno, how can they reach you?
You can find me on Twitter at IdaHenno. Look for me on Facebook, Henno Heiter. Easy to find. Just don't mistake me for the 13-year-old boy that's somewhere in the South. I'm not him.
Fair enough. You, Brian?
You can find me at, or you can find the show also at, man, I almost said the salty language, at the Crazy Life Pod on Twitter. When I post when new shows go up over there. You can also find the show on Facebook at facebook.com/groups/Crazy Life Podcast. And, there's a notes page on there that has a bunch of resources and stuff on there, like phone numbers and, different things. You know, if you're looking for some sort of help, there's something on there, or reach out to one of us and we can point you that way or maybe help you find something if, you know, you can't find it on your own. You can find me on Twitter at Stunami. You can find the other podcast I'm on, Salty Language, at salty_language, or at saltylanguage.com. That show is not safe for work, so, you know, make sure earbuds in. Don't let the kiddies listen. Or the children, you know. We're not safe for cats either.
Either one.
Yeah. If you'd like to help us out a little bit, to get found easier in searches, if you're on iTunes, make sure that if you could, leave us a review, rate, subscribe if you haven't already. And on other apps like Stitcher or whatever, use the like or share options if they have them. If you could, we'd appreciate that. Yeah, I think that's all that stuff. Oh, we're on Tangent Bound Network, which can be found at tangentboundnetwork.com. So go check that out. There's a bunch of shows over there and quality folks making shows over there. We're not doctors, therapists, trained professionals of any kind. Please don't use this show as a replacement for therapy, and please don't self-diagnose. You know, nothing wrong with doing a little research on WebMD, but, you know, still go talk to a professional. And if you find yourself needing help, please reach out. You know, like we've talked about through this episode, you know, find a therapist, find a support group, find an online forum, you know, whatever it is, try to reach out for some help, reach out to your friends and your support system, whatever it is. And, then of course, if you're feeling, suicidal or homicidal, or, you know, you plan on doing anything, you know, that can harm yourself, others, however you want to look at it, please reach out to somebody and tell them, even if it's the very beginning, like you're just having ideations, especially if you haven't previously, but no matter what, if you're in therapy, tell your therapist you're having them, or tell your doctor or whatever. Any of that kind of stuff is a red flag, and it allows them to help you stay ahead of it so that you don't reach a point where you might actually do something. So, you know, cause I've had enough loss the last couple of years, so I'm good. I'm full up. So we don't want to hear about anybody else. We don't want to lose anybody else. I know we're going to. That's the nature of life. But, you know, I don't want to hear about it this way, at least. You know? Let nature take its course.
Absolutely. And be safe, everybody.
Yeah, seriously. Take care of yourselves. And please don't, you know, if you're feeling suicidal, please don't act on that. You know, take that as your signal to reach out and find help. And then lastly, you know, reach out to people, tell them you love them, because, I mean, you know, I'm you know, a great example today. You just don't know if they won't be here tomorrow. So tell them you love them, you appreciate them, or just call them and see how they're doing. You know, text them, whatever, you know, see how they're doing. Just might make their day, might save their life, you know, or whatever. So, yeah.
Reach out and touch someone in an appropriate way.
Right.
Always appropriate, folks. But definitely try to smile this week, and try to have a good week, everyone, and be in touch with the feels. It's good.
Yeah.
Good to be in touch with the feelings. So we'll catch you next week.